the new project we have going with invasive species. So I will let Ron do his thing. Thank you everybody for joining us. I think questions can be posed on the chat or raise your hand, and I think we can handle that with a small group that we have.
Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I was asked, thanks for letting me speak again. I was asked if I could sort of do a quick summary. I know that most of you probably were here last week, but before we had the power outage. And so I will do that really, very quickly, and then we'll talk about the invasive, the piece. Let's see, here we go. So I'll briefly talk about 2018-19 and then this summer, and then talk about invasives and then our survey and what we might want to do beyond. So in 2018, we went every 500 feet along the shore, about 15 meters from shore, and we took a surface water sample, ran the qPCR, which is a molecular biology technique where we can actually quantify how much of any organism is in the water. And we were checking specifically for the bacteria that live in the human gut. So we found the yellow markers there are the ones where there was positive human enteric bacteria. And we found about 25%. We did Little Traverse, Lime, and Glen, and we found about 25% of the samples sites on those lakes had evidence of human bacteria in the water. In 2019, we thought, well, maybe, we want to know the impact of runoff. And so we had these sites on Little Traverse and Lime, and we had some on Leelanau and Glen, all the inlets, along with some control sites. And we wanted to know, after a significant rain event, how much bacteria was coming into our lakes. And so we sampled these sites after 10 days of no rain, so it was a very dry period. And then about 4 days later, we sampled again because we had a significant rain event. In about a 2-hour period, we got over 1 inch of rain. And so the very next morning, we went out while the runoff was coming in, and we sampled again. And then in that case, we sampled not specifically for humans, but for all mammal or bird and mammal enteric bacteria. So that'd be in their digestive system. That would be in the environment that would come in. And what we found in 2019, and this is just we used a method in 2019 that was EPA, the EPA protocol. So we abided by that strictly so that we could compare what we found with what they would use when they go around to public beaches and actually put up the red flag, so to speak, and maybe close a beach. And if you have, if you want, just kind of remember these two numbers, 1280 and 6,400. If you have 1280 or above, and those GE stands for genome equivalent. It's not important. It's just a quantitative number per 100 mils of water, which isn't very much. They'll close a beach, and then they'll track the source immediately, see where is that coming from. Is it geese or cows or humans or deer, whatever, dog. And if it's not human or cow, then they'll reopen the beach. However, if it's above 6,400 at that site, they'll actually close the beach down. It doesn't matter what source. It's not healthy. It's not safe to swim for any human at that point. So what we found, if you take a look at this one, is, and we care mostly about Little Traverse there, about halfway down, that those inlets, several of those inlets before the rain, essentially didn't have very much, had just trace amounts. And then after the rain, we found, and this is just the ones that were, red or orange. And so we found some sites where they actually were above those benchmarks where you ought to be looking at what's going on. In fact, one site was really high. They would have shut the beach down after that rain and said, no swimming here, because of that. And we actually found trace human at that site. And what that means is there was evidence of human enteric bacteria. The unknowns don't mean that it wasn't human. It just means that the marker that we use to assess the enterococcus, it's hard to explain, but the bacterium that we're after with the initial test is quite hardy. It persists in the environment. The ones that we do for source tracking are here today, gone tomorrow type thing. And so you don't necessarily pick them up. So it doesn't mean that it's not human. It just means that we don't know. And that's quite common with source tracking of the enteric. So anyway, you look at that and then you say, well, how do we compare to the other lakes? And if you look at Glen and Leland, the top and the bottom there on the left, and then versus Lime, and I'm on Lime Lake, for those of you who didn't know, they had pre-rain. Glen had, alarmingly high pre-rain, so there's something to check out there. But the rest of us were in the ballpark, and then post-rain, ours went up. And if you take a look at the last column, percent increase after a rain, our little lakes, we went up a lot. So there's a big percent increase in, and this is whole lake at the inlet sites. It's an average for the whole lake, but pretty significant that there's enteric bacteria coming in after a rain event on our lakes. So then we said, well, okay, we need to learn more about septics. And this is just a little thing I shared this last week, just basically saying that we have a lot to learn. Michigan is not the leader by any means. It's the lagger in the country as far as, caring and doing things about septics that are getting older or need to be rejuvenated. We're the last state of the 50 to have things that address this. So this year we said, well, let's do this. Let's take well water from volunteer sites and
Excuse me, Ron.
Yeah.
So I raised my hand, but Julie did not see it. I have a question for you before you proceed on to here, because I have a question regarding the data that you just showed. And back with the, right there. Let's look at that. I was talking to my wife about this. We discussed this. She's smarter than I am. But if you look at that, you got Glen and Leland on. Okay, so these are concentrations, right? The data here are concentrations. So if you look at it, Glen and Leland are much bigger than Lime and Little Traverse. My question to you is, could it be the reason why we're so much higher in concentration after a rain is because we have less water to dilute that out? So if you get the same amount of bacteria from around the area flowing into Glen Lake, you would expect the concentration, because it's so big, to be a lot better than our lake. So could that explain it rather than the other things that we're going to get into? Yeah,
it could, except that what we were sampling was right at the mouth of the inlet. So we really don't care how big the lake is. The lake is like the reservoir, but we're measuring not out in the lake. We're measuring right where the inlet comes into the lake. And so it wouldn't really matter how big your reservoir is behind you. It really would matter what's in that stream. Now, granted, once it came into the lake, it wouldn't dilute out as fast, but that's not what these data are showing. These data are simply showing the creeks coming in, or the inlets coming in. So right in there, we actually went right up into the inlet and took the samples. We didn't go out into the lake at those sites. So that's a good thought, though.
Okay.
Yep. So we're going to take water sample from the well. We're going to do this in June, July, and we did with your volunteers and Glen Lake and Lime Lake in June, July, and August. At the same site, we're going to go in front of their place in the surface water. Same thing we did in 2018, 15 meters from shore, surface water. But then we're gonna look for enteric bacteria, all kinds, to see if there's anything, and then if we get some, we're going to source track it. But then we added a piece where we want to go and take a drone and fly over the drain field of these sites on all of these lakes and see if there's any with the infrared camera, and to see if there's any evidence of compromised drain field, meaning if it's compromised or it's overused, or there's something wrong, it'll be warmer because there'll be more decay at the surface as opposed to it filtering down where it's supposed to go and use the soil to filter out. And so the infrared and the camera that we expected to have can actually take each pixel. It goes down to the pixel. So it's very high resolution infrared imaging. That's just a picture of Dennis Wyand, who is the owner of Zero Gravity Aerial, and he does the drones work. And that's his drone, and that's him just taking the camera and taking a picture of himself. So you can see that where the heat, shows the heat. At any rate, because of COVID, we thought we'd go through the whole summer doing all of our research projects sort of unscathed by the COVID, because we really aren't, interacting with people. We're doing a lot of research, but we're not. But we didn't quite make it because the infrared imaging, the companies that do the infrared shifted all of their production from drones or cameras like this to thermometers for the world. And so the backlog on getting that camera is now 10 weeks. So not to worry, because we're just gonna put that piece off until next year. Same places. We're not going to take the water samples every, at those places, but we are going to fly those drain fields, and so we'll get an idea then. It's just that we had to postpone that due to the pandemic. So anyway, that's what we're looking at for this year, and we're doing, and the results aren't in, so I can't really share any of that yet. Now, so this is where the power went out last week. I was just talking about this piece. And invasive species, boat wash versus early detection, remediation, cost versus effectiveness. So I do know, having worked with a lot of lakes, that Glen Lake has a really extensive boat wash. They start fairly early in the spring and they go fairly late in the fall. They go 7 days a week at their boat launch, and it's costing them, without the purchase of the equipment, but it's costing them over $20,000 a year to man that one boat launch. And we as Lime Lake looked at it and said, our lake is small. We can monitor what's going on with invasives and maybe have remediation fairly quickly. We can move fairly quickly. We're a small lake. We're a small organization. Instead of investing our money into, lots of money, which we don't have, into boat wash, manning the boat wash, maybe what we'll do is we will be very diligent about looking for invasive, especially like Eurasian water milfoil and others that could take over very quickly. And when we find it, we'll immediately mobilize and go into remediation so that it isn't a problem. That's what we decided to do. I think your board is maybe making those similar decisions. We talked about it, and I think, Jeff, you looked into the cost of the boat wash for your launch there, and yeah, it becomes it's a cost versus effectiveness, and somebody could still come in when it's not manned, or if you have a voluntary one, some lakes have it where you come in and you're supposed to spray your boat and trailer, and some do and some don't. And then you have to have an ordinance that makes, if you're manning it, you have to have an ordinance that says you can't launch unless you do it. And that's a political thing. And it's quite a road. And so we just decided that we would do it where we're just going to keep a really close eye on it. The reason is they discovered just last year in Lake Leelanau, South Lake Leelanau, Eurasian water milfoil, and they're spending over $130,000 this year alone to start to get a handle on it. Now they have a much bigger lake, but it is something we want to definitely keep an eye on. So having said that, we on Lime Lake and now on Little Traverse Lake, we did the same study, the same plant survey and algal survey. And so what we did is we went around at key places along the drop-off, and we sampled and you'll see this all in the report, which I hope I'll get to you very quickly. Kelsey's writing it now, and I'm hoping for next week to get that out to you. So anyway, at each location, when we GPS those spots, we threw the double-sided rake in the four, north, south, east, and west, dragged and then identified all the plants, and then quantified based on, was it in one quadrant, was it in 2 throws, was it in 3 throws, or was it in all 4 throws? So you sort of get a relative amount at that site. So we did that on one day, where we went all the way around and looked at those key places at the sort of the main drop-off region, because we know that the milfoil prefers that drop-off region anywhere from 8 to 15 feet. And so that's what we did the one day. And along with that, we did an algal survey just as a baseline, so that you know what type of algae you have. And that was done with a plankton tow for so many minutes behind the boat. And then the sample comes back and then analyzed in the lab with a microscope to identify all of the different algal species. And that's relatively quantified to how much of it you see. So you have relative amounts of all the different species, and that'll all be in the report as well. So there you have a baseline, you know what you have. And so as changes happen, and changes are going to happen, whether it be sugarloaf takes off and this, or another invasive comes in, things are going to change. It's a living system. And so it's good to have baseline data to know what the changes and track the changes, and then be able to address those. Like, well, wait a minute, what's going on? Why are we having this algal bloom? What's going on with this or that? And then the third thing that we did is we went around the perimeter of both lakes. And what's going to be fun to compare Lime and Little Traverse, because we're connected very closely. We went around the perimeter of each lake, and we looked for the plants that are growing at the water's edge, the aquatic plants that are growing at or near the water's edge. And the invasives we're looking for there would be the one we were just talking about, slips my mind. The purple one, purple loosestrife, yellow iris, Phragmites, and so we did that. Took another day to do that, and so that'll all be in as well. And so I don't really want to go into all the details about the report. I was asked to just kind of wait and put it out in a report, and then your members, you can share it with your membership. But as we were speaking earlier, though, you definitely have purple loosestrife. It starts, Meredith, right about in your region there, and then goes all the way around to the west, and a little bit curves up a little bit in the north towards the boat launch. And there's a number of spots. It's not just you and Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a number of little pots here, little groups here. And I think a lot of it could be either handled with I didn't know. I don't know the remediation as well, but the digging, you know, if that does work, if there's just a little patch of it, like just a few plants is what we saw in a number of places, that if they could just dig those, you wouldn't have to apply for the chemical permit and, you know, and do all that. Um, I don't know. I don't know if that works. I'm not versed on actually getting rid of it. We certainly identified it. And then I don't know. Do you want me to, Julie, speak to the email from this morning? I can speak to that. Is that thumbs up or not? You're muted. Okay. Yeah. So just like a half hour ago, got an email from Julie from one of your members that said, "Hey, somebody saw Eurasian water milfoil, or they saw Eurasian water milfoil right at the where Shetland Creek comes in from Lime Lake into your lake." And so I'm not saying that, you know, they're wrong. However, we did go there as a logical place to look for plants, and there is a pretty big patch of aquatic plants there, but we didn't find any Eurasian water milfoil. It would be an unusual place, to be honest, because it would likely have flowed in from Lime. And when we did a survey all the way around Lime, all the weed beds, we didn't find any Eurasian water milfoil in Lime. So if we had it in Lime, and then it's, yeah, sure, pieces of it come down the creek and go into your lake, and then they you know, establish. But knowing that Lime doesn't have any right this year, I doubt that it would be right there. But anyway, there's a pretty good patch of don't call them weeds, aquatic garden. There's a nice aquatic garden right there. And you know, weeds are things that you don't want, right? And those you do want. There's a lot of potamogeton, which is pondweed. There's a couple of different types there's a Cara, an alga. There was one little patch of a suspicious rush, that there is an invasive rush, and because there's no flower or anything, it was difficult to identify, but it's certainly a question mark. But a very small patch, like literally that big of a patch with sprouts coming up. But there was sago pondweed, which has this feathery look that some people may be confused with Eurasian water milfoil. So I'm not saying that the person that sent you the email is wrong. We didn't survey the whole lake, but we looked at real key places, and that one right there where Shetland Creek comes in, we didn't see any in that patch. But yeah, so anyway, that's that we did see some a couple patches of likely yellow iris, but again, they weren't flowering, so it's just something we'll have to keep an eye on. So anyway, that's the story on what we're doing with invasives. And we met, and Lou, you'll probably want to talk to that a little bit more, but we did meet yesterday with a Zoom with the National Park and Lime Lake president and your board, and because we might as well all work together. And I think I'd like to just say in closing that, well, I guess I did have a slide here. I think, I think our advice would be we need to continue with the enteric bacteria. There's some things going on here, and we saw some other things that we might note in the report. But I think it is important to keep if you're not going to do a boat wash, even if you are, I think a diligent aquatic plant and algal surveys is a smart thing. And then I really like this one. I'm glad that we are working together, Lime and Little Traverse. I've been on this lake for 20 years now, part of the board for most of those 20 years. And I'm just delighted to see that we are talking and working together and doing things together. And you guys ought to especially be excited about that, because we send you our water. So you ought to really care about your upstream neighbors, and that's who we are. And so we really want to keep our lake as pristine as possible. And we're doing a lot of things to that end, including enteric bacteria studies, swimmer's itch study, plant survey, algal survey, and we'll do remediation as immediately as soon as we find something that's not up to the standards that we're trying to hold. So that's about it. And then I purposely had very few slides so that there'd be plenty of time for questions. So
Julie, let me just make a comment to everybody on. This is the results of Kristen Race, who is the Water Quality Committee chairman, and myself talking over the years of developing, in essence, baselines where we are. And we, of course, branched out into the invasive species, but that's what we have been all about. And in the process now of developing these baselines, we're, of course, moving into trying to find out why and where it goes from here and what can we do on it. So this is everything from the Canale 3-year baseline report to Ron's report on septics and wells, and now into invasive species. What this has done to us is that we realize it's just not a couple of years and then we're all done. I guess fairly quickly that came to the point. And so we are developing the 2021 budget. We intend to do this with Ron on both of the invasives and with the well water septic systems. And so we realize that we will have some kind of long-term budgeting if we really care to control and attack water quality invasive species. And we'll bring this out. Our biggest challenge is to communicate. And so I mean, we have 12, 20 on here. I hope you talk to 10 other people. We are putting this on our website. We'll send blogs out. But this is just, in my opinion, the start of a long-term program to save the lake. So, Kristen, if you may comment or.
This is really the primary concern of the board at this point, is our water quality. As we've said many times, this is why we're all here. So this is really the emphasis, and the board has been great in their support of everything we're doing. So I'm very pleased about that.
Oh, one last pitch. Oh boy, we need help. Without volunteers, there's a lot of work. As everybody that's involved in this beginning of mind, even collecting data. You don't have to have any training, we'll train, but we really probably need, we have 4 or 5 of us that actively work on it. We really need to have somewhere around 10, 15. And there are everything from, say, Jan Roddy's helping us to develop articles for the website. If we're going to be effective, we really need the lake people informed. We'll talk about costs, but not beating you up on cost, but it does cost money. But more importantly is that we take the time, like we're having Zoom, like we met with the park, and it takes time, and we do need to volunteer. So thank you for those who are speaking up and willing to help. We will be using you.
Ron, I have a question about, since I'm new to the lake care, what do you do if you notice high bacteria in the lake? What are some of the things that can be done to remediate those problems?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, the whole purpose of all of what we do is not to be like the government coming in and snooping around and finding stuff on your property and making you pay. Our whole thrust is education. And so if we were to go around and find high bacteria in front of your place, your new place,
Right.
say, hey, we got some, we meaning your lake association, we're going to give the report to them. But I think the attitude should be, and this is how the Glen Lake Association does it, is they just come and say, hey, here's what we found, Meredith. We've sampled here, and in front of your place, we found really quite high levels of enteric bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to have your septic tested? Just to, there are different tests to see, especially if we source track it to human. Maybe you have a kennel and there's 20 dogs running around and they're all pooping, and then when it rains, it comes in. That
Yeah.
happens. Or
Okay.
there's a farmers up there and they have cows, and then that comes down. But if it's human, then we would look for things that you could do. Again, not being the government, not being the heavy arm of the law, simply education. Because like Kristen just said, what do we care about up here? Our water. We love our water. And you know what? We think most people, if you show them what we found, and they have an impact and are negative, they're having a negative impact, most people would actually say, well, gosh, all right, we're going to see if we can do something about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So if
And let
there's,
me add here, Meredith, that
yeah,
it's similar to Jeff contacting you and working with you on Purple Loosestrife. In other
right.
words, in addition to it, we're going to give you background on septic system, where you can go, how you can do. We intend to be the catalyst of helping the landowner, water owner, property owner, and in essence, work with the person. And yes, we realize that maybe the LTLPLA will assist in some of the financial costs and so on. All these are details we have to work out. But again, when we do come to you, we want to come with firm data. We want to show you that we have the background and we do know what we're talking about. And as Ron said, so far we've had great cooperation. So.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, you would go to the homeowner, let's say we're having trouble with swimmer's itch on the beach. You would come to that homeowner, and I don't even know how to take care of swimmer's itch, but you would do something to help eliminate it in that area then.
Yeah. Let me give you maybe a better example. So what we had done is we had a drone survey, a shoreline survey.
Okay.
And this is pretty cool. That you're going to see a lot more of this. But the drone survey goes all the way around your lake, taking a picture from whatever elevation of the shoreline. And then what we did for Lime Lake is, we meaning my daughter Kelsey, does most of this work, but is spend time on the computer and go along over and over and over looking for are there seawall, is there inlets, pipes coming like from where you're pumping stuff into the lake, is there a green belt, are there sandings where you bring in sand artificially, pile of sand for the kids to play, are there things that we want to have, like do you have an irrigation, are you drawing water out to irrigate your lawn, which is a positive thing. We want people. So then what you do is you put a percent, like we have 20% of our, I'm making this up because I don't know the data yet,
Yeah,
but
that's
20% of our landowners on Lime Lake have a green belt. Wow, that's cool. That's in 2020. By 2025, we'd like to have that be 35%. Okay. Now we have goals as an association, and we can go to the people that don't have a green belt and just give them brochures, say, hey, here's what a green belt does for our water. Here's why you might consider it. We're not forcing you. We just want to educate you, because a lot of people just don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know. They come from a city. They come up here like, oh, let's just do this. And they don't really know the living system. And so education is so huge and that's what we would do, is we would just, and that's what we're going to do here, is we're going to set goals for our lake. We won't fly a drone every year, but every few years we'll have a drone survey to see how are we doing.
Okay.
Do we have more of these and less of these, and so on and so forth. And all of that is going to translate into better water quality for Lime Lake. Oh,
Okay.
you can look for Cladophora, which is an alga that only grows on hard surfaces, and it's due to increased nutrients into your lake. So you're fertilizing heavily or septic or whatever, you get this green Cladophora. It's a type of algae. But anyway, the drone picks that up as well, and so what we have is we have screenshots. So when Kelsey's looking at this video, oh, there's a Cladophora, screen shoots it and puts it in a file called Cladophora. So we have all these files with all these pictures. And we can go right now to that. So if Meredith said, hey, we have a question, then the lake biologist, and this, we learned a lot of this from Rob Kerner, Glen Lake, but lake biologists would go and say, hey, may I come over and I'll come over and take a look and we'll talk, but may I pull up your drone footage from your place and show you and talk about it? And you say, yeah, okay. Because it is kind of, we keep it confidential because we don't want to have that out there where everybody can, it's like, we don't want to invade your privacy.
Sure.
But if you said, yeah, you have my permission, then we'd pull up the pictures of your place, the drone, say, now look at this. And we would show you what we're talking about from a drone vision. So it's really some really cool thing, using technology to really help our lake water quality.
That's awesome.
And let me add something here, Meredith, for your understanding, everybody else, is that the 2019 study that Ron did, you'll notice that there are not people's names, there's letter use. And that just is, as Ron says, we're not trying to beat up everybody. An interesting phenomena in the 2019 survey of QPCR, over where the highest reading was around us, there was no home. And in fact, it is an outlet of the marsh from the park. And the second one is G, which happens to stand for me. I'm on the right next to the Swanson Preserve on the south side, is that I had like 1,400. And so now we can start to go back and say, what's going on? And quite frankly, if you look at the east end of the lake, I've been noticing in the last 2 to 3 years, we're having a change. It's a living organism. It's starting to change. And it kind of goes from Shetland Creek, although in looking back on the inlet, Shetland Creek was not our major problem. And that's how we're starting to break it down and try to make sense out of it. And last comment, Ron happens to be a swimmer's itch expert. We wish that Ron wishes that we had a solution for swimmer's itch. We have learned a tremendous amount more about it. We just haven't learned how to. Well, if you go on the website, you will get advice on when's the best time and how and where it is and such as that. So, comment.
What is the website? Because I don't have that information yet. Or could somebody send me the website? Or
Yes. Yeah, we'll send it to you.
Okay.
It's littletraverslake.org, I believe.
Okay.
And just another follow-up too, kind of speaking to, well, let me ask, there's a couple of questions popping up on Zoom. Ron, you mentioned a green belt, and we had Lindsay ask, hey, what's a green belt? So what is your definition there?
No, that's a great question. So a green belt is, if you, I'll tell you what a green belt isn't. If you have a lawn from your cottage down to the lake and you mow the lawn all the way to the lake, you don't have a green belt. If you have and I'm not sure how many feet they define it as, but if you have an area that you either put some native plants in there, there's different plants that they recommend, but anyway, it's not grass, mowed grass, fertilized grass right down to the shore. You have this area of natural, and what that does is those roots actually pull out the nutrients that from the water that's draining, coming off your yard or down in the water table, coming down into your the aquifer into your lake. They actually pull out the nitrogen and phosphorus before it goes into your lake, because if it gets in your lake, it's going to feed the algae and the plants, and so you're going to have more algal blooms if you have more nutrients. Well, we can sort of prevent that if we have these green belts in their area, and you know what, they can look very beautiful. It's just we really encourage that, and there's a whole program for that, that if your lake is interested, I know that Tricia Denton will actually come to your association, maybe she has, I don't know, and talk about the green or the whole shoreline steward program, what landowners can do to their their area. So anyway, sorry about that's a green belt.
May I make another comment? Randy, I'd like you to just pose your question to everybody, but but what is kind of tricky about water is it moves around. And so it's good to build kind of the trend on what's happening. We're starting to build the story in terms of the enteric bacteria, but we do know that human waste is getting into our lake. Even though we may not be able to point to the exact source, like Lou mentioned, we're still working on figuring out where is it coming from. But one thing we do know is that septic drain fields need about 4 feet of soil beneath it, between the groundwater surface elevation and the drain field, and that our high lake levels are sometimes even making that buffer zone where a lot of the microbial action degrades our wastewater. That zone is smaller because of our high water levels, and sometimes there might be some drain fields that are actually flooded. So we're gonna, I think part of the drone survey that Ron's 2020 Enteric study is going to show us is how are our drain fields, and we've got nine sites this year that we're looking at. In particular, so we're taking the groundwater out of the well, the lake water, and then flying the drone. So figuring out where that's coming from is a tough job, but I think kind of doing a survey of the conditions of those drain fields, and you can look at yours. Is it getting flooded when we have these huge rains? And if you see that, that's a problem. Overall, that lake level is causing more impact on our lake, I believe. So Randy, writes on the group chat that he's working on an Eagle permit to install a new septic system. So Randy, can you speak to that? What made you want to do that? And you have a question there too. Go ahead.
Well, our system, when we bought our property 4 years ago, we had it inspected and the system was determined to be functioning, but the system is under previous owner may not have upgraded it appropriately. So, and we're, oh shoot, can you still hear me?
Yes.
You froze for just a second. We missed a sentence.
And we're planning on doing some remodeling and additions. So we have to upgrade anyway to be able to do that. But just the health department was here last year, I guess it was, and helped me locate the site. The permitting with the health department went very quickly and easily. And but then he made me aware that we're in a critical dune area, so I'm working on this extensive Eagle permit. It's painful. So I'm getting, I hope to have, based on the feedback I've gotten, how long it takes currently to get approval from the DEQ or the Eagle people. It probably won't happen now till next year, but hopefully next spring we can do that. So I just thought I'd throw that out there as if anybody's aware of any contractors maybe they or their neighbors have worked with recently. I need to start looking into that. I've heard our general contractor I've worked with throughout a number of, probably it could be close to 20,000 for a new system. So I just need to, find a qualified contractor, but obviously look at cost.
Yeah. Hey, Randy, the on the northeast side of the lake, there was a Cedar Home. I can't remember who the guy's name is, but they just put one in like a month ago, and they seem to be really happy. It's probably 2/3 away east of us, on the north side, you'll see they put a big mound between the red house and the road. You really can't miss it. It's kind of a little home down there. So you might want to ask them. The other thing is, I got Williams septic tank people come out to pump my tank this year. They are super fantastic. I would also ask them. They probably, I mean, they pump tanks all the time. They probably know who will put in a good drain field and who wouldn't. So I would also recommend that you ask them. They're really good.
Okay, thank you.
One more comment I can make about the green belt. You know, having those natives with long roots is good for cleaning water, purifying water that's getting into our lake. And I'm talking, some of these natives have roots like 5 feet deep. I mean, they're really, really interesting plants, I think. But in addition to water, cleaning the water as it's passing through our soil into the lake, it also stabilizes your bank. And we're working right now to pick a contractor who will stabilize our bank using a combination of rock and natives. So it's kind of a cool thing. I think they're beautiful. Like swamp milkweed, for example, is just gorgeous when it's growing. But it's also, it has multiple uses. Randy mentions that the Leelanau Conservancy advised him on the Greenbelt. Jan Roddy says, hey, take a look at the website. There's a lot of good resources for shoreline planting and Greenbelt. An additional plug for the website, there's just been in the last couple days some some new information on the website, so check in. We'll try to like put a blog out there to say when we've got some new stuff on the website, so you're aware of that.
The state of Michigan also has some very interesting resources. So just Google it. They have some really good things that's very important.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. And those links are on our website too. If you just want to go pop in there, you can take a peruse. But yeah, you're exactly right.
And I like that. I like some of their websites because they give you specific plant names, things to look for, rather than just saying green. They'll say for sandy soil, choose this. For clay soil, choose this. So be sure to look at that.
Could we add that to in a blog type of information to go out to people?
Sure.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to have, you know, some people picture, well, then I want the kids or grandkids to be able to go down and go swimming. It's not like your whole beach has to be this big thing that, you know, this jungle they have to get through. You can have a little, you know, have an area that, all right, this is where we put our kayaks in, or we can do this, but to have most of it be a green belt really helps our water quality.
Ron, this is Joan Gerthet. I have another question. Who is Tricia Denton?
Yeah, so Tricia Denton now works for she lives right on the other side of Lime Lake here, up in the hills there. So she's very local, and she works for the Glen Lake Association as their stewardship ambassador. So she's actually hired, and she works for the Glen Lake Association, but a part of her sort of job description is to go out to other lakes in the area and facilitate for free to facilitate water quality issues. So Glen Lake is wanting, like, well, we want to, you know, we want the whole region to be good. So so Tricia came to our board meeting last summer and had a presentation, had these wonderful booklets, and every person got one. And so Tricia Denton, D-E-N-T-O-N is and if you email me, or I can get you her contact information.
Ron, we have it. I have her contact information.
Okay, yeah, she's excellent. Excellent. And
she's come to, gosh, I think the last 3 or 4 of our Lake Association annual meetings. She was here last week. No. She was here for the Ray Canale talk on July 11. And yeah, I wasn't aware of her charge to build or facilitate communication with Glen Lake. That's cool to know. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah.
We might have her in for another Zoom and just, you know, share some of her expertise.
Yes.
We've just kind of started our green space, and I don't really know how wide it has to be, and we've just stopped mowing. And it's amazing how many things have come in already, but I just wondered if there were other things that we could plant and, you know, to make a more attractive waterfront.
There are lots of things. Yes.
Jen has a link in the chat for the spot on our website where you can find some information. It's on the chat, so if you click the little chat button, you can see that link and copy that if you wish. Hey Ron, how often are you surveying the lake like you just did for our lake? How often are you doing that for Lime, or would you suggest for Little Traverse?
Yeah. So what we did on Lyme is we did the plant survey, the shoreline survey once. We did the algal survey twice on Lyme, and you know we're learning a lot. You know, not afraid to say it, that you know Glen Lake has a really good program, and Rob Carner's a good friend of mine. He's the lake biologist there. But so we sort of said, hey, how do you do it? We'll do it the same way. That way we can compare notes. And they do it every month, the algal survey, because things change, right? With the algal, you know that in your lake, you have algal blooms. All of a sudden the lake was clear, and the next day it's kind of like cloudy. It's like, what's going on? It's an algal bloom. What algae? Well, it's different species each time. And so, you know, the more you do it, the more. We just did it twice on Lyme, and we did it once on Little Traverse, and then we just did the plant survey once in the shoreline survey once. Colt's foot is another invasive, and that flowers in the spring. It's like a dandelion-looking plant, and we didn't look for that because you'd actually have to walk the shoreline because it's quite small. So we didn't know about that, but the rest of them, I think once, really. If we repeat what we did this year, I don't think you need to do more than that.
Once a summer?
Yeah, once a summer in the midsummer, you know, not early summer before sub, but midsummer. You'll catch everything that you are looking for. That would be dangerous, or that would, you know, create problems for the lake. So yeah, I think what we did is pretty good, pretty good. Now you could do more sites. You know, it would cost more to do more than that, because you know, it's just time. And but you know, I think we did a pretty good survey, as you'll see in the report. So you know, to say that we'd missed something, yeah, you know, we didn't do every square foot of the lake, but we did a pretty good thorough job. So
Super.
yeah.
Jared Lee Anderson writes on the chat, is there any relationship between water quality and swimmer's itch? That's a cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yep, inverse relationship. The worse your water quality, the better your swimmer's itch. So the snails, they're called pulmonate snails. There's different species of snails, but they are the first ones to die off as soon as you have poor water quality. So the better your water quality, the better chance you're going to have swimmer's itch. The more diverse your ecosystem, the better chance you're going to have swimmer's itch from multiple sources. There is good news, though. I don't know if Meredith's still on, but there is good news. We've made, in the last 4 years, we've made more progress on our understanding and ways to prevent swimmer's itch than I did in the previous 40 that I worked on this issue. So there's hope. There's real hope, and we're initiating a major. We want to put some science behind these different prevention strategies, so that we can actually go and tell people, hey, if you use this method, you're going to be this percent. You're going to reduce it by 95%, or you know, we want to have real science behind what we do, And so you'll be seeing a proposal, because I don't know how bad it is on your lake, but other lakes are going to be seeing a proposal this fall to be part of, to have volunteers be part of this this way to assess different prevention strategies and see which ones really work and which ones aren't as good, and so on and so forth. So that's another thing on the horizon to look for.
Thanks, Ron. On the topic of volunteers, how is there a way to train people that own property on the lake, train us how to find the invasives and what to look for and raise the red flag?
Yeah, there you can go. There's workshops put on. I know Joe Lattimore at Michigan State does a lot. She's kind of the local expert. She lives in Traverse City, but they put on workshops. I know, like in September, there's the Michigan Inland Lakes Conference. It's every 2 years. It's not going to be in person this year. It's going to be online, which is too bad, except that it's way cheaper. So it's like $30, and you can be there for all 3 days, and any thing you want to tap into. I'm actually presenting at two of the different sessions at that. But there are different places that you could, if you wanted people to go and get trained. There are different little seminars or little training things that are put on. People could learn. Yep.
Super, thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions that are popping up in your head as we go?
Can you read me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Dave Spadhelf. I have a question regarding lake chemistry and its impact on various water qualities we're documenting, particularly, for example, pH of the lake, and whether at a point in time with a high acidic or alkaline pH, can that be modified in any manner? And what general implication does acidic versus alkaline have in terms of what we would consider a good quality water status?
Is there any pH does pH influence algal blooms and growth in the lake? I guess maybe that's a good summary, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so certainly pH affects everything. However, we have the natural buffer system because of limestone, Lime Lake. So our pH is not going to change much, even with acid rain. We're in a pretty protected environment because of that. We have a natural buffering system. So I don't know. We haven't done the water chemistry analyses. We're proposing that for next year. There's a unit called a HydroLab where you can go and Glen Lake actually owns one. I think they're like 10-15 grand, but we're looking to maybe rent that from them for a couple of days during the summer on Lime Lake to come over and do. It does pH, conductivity, turbidity, temperature at whatever depth you want to do it at. It's a probe that goes down, and it's a machine that will tell you all of those things. And I think they're important. I think if you're going to do a good assessment, the water chemistry is also important. It doesn't do things like phosphorus or nitrogen or other metals and things, but it does a pretty good baseline for water chemistry. So another thing to think about. But
that is being monitored.
Okay.
In our water chemistry work with Ray Canale. So
okay.
We've got some of that going.
Good.
And so we have that data on our database if you want to go look at it, folks, on our website. But yeah, it's pretty complicated, all the interactions in this natural system, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thanks for letting me, thanks for the opportunity. It's always good to educate best we can.
We certainly appreciate your time this morning and your,
Sure.
you know, work. We're so glad that you're close, and we look forward to building partnership with Lime Lake.
Yeah,
as
great.
We all look at what's happening on our lakes.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. If you want to make any comments to the water group, you can do that to me, julie.sutphen@gmail.com, to Lou Gerthet, Jeff Schutz, Kathy Pringle, Phil Donatelli. We're all on that group. We would so like to have more conversation about what we're doing to monitor and troubleshoot on our lake, prevent degradation of our lake water.
I just have a question.
Oh
Sorry.
yes, Coco, sure.
Yeah, if we have a question, then should we be sending it to the group that you just mentioned?
Yeah.
And is there a way you could group yourself so we don't have to type out each email and remember and inadvertently leave somebody off?
I wonder how we would get that done.
I don't know. Just the best way, you know, so the same person isn't always being asked, and you guys can decide, okay, who wants to take care of that.
Uh-huh.
For example, I just found some purple loosestrife, you know, and
Right.
would want to follow up with you guys. And we are going to avidly greenbelt our cottage. It's the only part of our property that isn't, you know, developed. And I just want to know who to talk to. And then also, when we find, the other day after the big rain, I think it was last Saturday, did we have it or Sunday? Oh my God, we had things floating around of all different shapes and sizes and colors. And so who do we take that to if we want to get, because we're swimmers, so we're out in the water, and then we got out of the water because that was just, it was really awful. But what do who do we take that to? Or how do we document it? Do we photograph it? Do we collect it? Is anyone interested in seeing what we found or what?
Sure. Lou Gerthet and Jeff Schutz are kind of heading up the invasive end of things.
Coco brings up a good point, though, and I agree with her that we probably need to have a designated person that receives the questions, emails, not just have all of us involved. And I'm talking kind of to Kristen and Julie here with everybody, and we don't. My question is that should Kristen at least receive them and send them on? Kristen, I'm kind of saying that because we're getting Julie overwhelmed. In fact, quite frankly, we're all overwhelmed. And got so much going on, so much good stuff going on. But that is a good question. Coco, we will get back and have a blog to address that.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm not sure who to. Yeah, great. Thank you.
And where you go with them, well, that's all on kind of communications. But we'll get back and address at least who to come to first.
For different issues, right?
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Good idea. Okay. Great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks again.
Okay,
Thanks very
Julie.
much.
Great to see
Thanks,
you.
Ron.
Yep.
All right, I'm ending the meeting. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.